everyone, I'm Vibha Chauhan and welcome to Jahan Classes Funda Clear. So today I will explain Class 9th Geography Chapter 2 and our chapter is Physical Features of India. So physical features of India. Now in this chapter we are going to look at the major physical features of our country that are present in India. So as in the previous chapter, the last chapter, we had seen that India is a very vast country and there are various landforms presented in our country. So you know that in this chapter we are going to discuss about the physical features of our country. Now in the last chapter we have seen a kind of introduction and we are moving a step forward about our country. Now you know what, that we live in different terrains. All of you live in different terrains you are familiar with, but in overall in the country there are different physical features. In fact, in India almost all major physical features are present in India. So what are those physical features, major physical features of our country, we'll discuss in this chapter. Now first of all, one of the biggest question here is, what are physical features? Now physical features, you could say that are kind of different types of landforms, or you could say that features that a geological area consists of. Like for example, the islands, valleys, volcanoes, you could say volcanoes, plains, plateaus, rivers, all those are physical features. So we will discuss about all those physical features that are present in India. Now let's start our chapter, rock. Let's start our chapter with rock. As all of you know that rock can be as hard as marble and can be as soft as the soapstone or sandstone. So you could say that rock that can be of different types, can be as hard as a marble or can be as soft as you could say that soapstone that is used for making talcum powder. Now you know what, that there is a difference in the rock, texture of rock, color of rock or the shape of rock because of its different origin. Now you know what, that all rocks are found, you could say that, are formed not by just one method. There is variation among their origin, you could say, among the processes from which they have been formed. Like for example, the igneous rocks, the metamorphic rocks or the sedimentary rocks, because of their different origin they vary from each other, and that same happens for our physical features. Now for the physical features as well, not all the physical features are the same or have the same origin, because they have different types of their origin but different processes, different methods, you could say. So they have been originated by, you could say that, different methods, different processes. Like for example, volcanic eruption, folding, earthquake, there are different, you could say that, processes for the formation of physical features. And you know what, that for doing so, for finding the origination of any physical feature, what happens that the earth scientists, as all of you know, that do the observation on earth, that do the theories for our earth, for the formation of the earth. So earth scientists have given many theories about the origination of different physical features, and one such plausible theory is of you could say that plate tectonics. Now theory of plate tectonics is about the plates. As all of you know that according to this theory, there are major 7 plates, you could say, and some minor plates which all the earth consists. Now here you could say that a thing has to be noticed. Plates, as all of you know that according to this theory, there are 7 major plates and some minor plates. And earlier, many million years ago, what happened, that there was a supercontinent, you could say that was known as Pangea. Now in this Pangea, all these plates were joined together, you could say. So they were joined together, and together, you know what, that they were called as Pangea. But after a million years ago, these plates moved towards different directions, and you could say that were separated by different regions. And these plates, all those plates that are plate tectonics, you could say that, you know what, that move just few centimeters, few millimeters in a year. So they move you could say that very less length in a million years, and that's why their movement changes changes has brought a lot of changes, but in a million years you could say. Now there can be, that because of the movement of all those plates, there is folding, faulting and volcanic eruption, you could say. Now what are those? We will discuss later in this chapter. Now first let us discuss about the movement of our plates. Now there can be three types of movements of all those plates. Now first is convergent boundary. Now their movement is known as boundary because they form a kind of boundary. Now convergent boundary, you could say that is when two plates move towards each other, and divergent is just opposite of it. Now in divergent boundary, the boundary is created when the two plates don't move towards each other but in the opposite direction, you could say. So they are not facing each other, they are going to opposite directions, and that's why it is called as divergent boundary. Now there may be some cases where what happens is that two plates which are moving can collide or collude with each other, and what happens that they may slide each other, and that is called as transform boundary. So transform boundary, you could say that when two plates, you could say that slide each other, they are not facing each other or not going to opposite of each other but are sliding each other, and that is called as a transform boundary. Now as I said that because of the movement of plates, there is folding, faulting and volcanic eruption. Now first case of movement we had seen about the convergent boundary, and because of the convergent boundary, folding is caused, you could say, and faulting and you could say volcanic eruption is due to the divergent boundary. Now you have to remember that from divergent boundary there is faulting and the volcanic eruption, and from the convergent boundary there is, you could say, that folding. So you could say that all these are caused just because of the movement of plate tectonics, plates, you could say. Now you know what, that there is a very vast change, there is a very big impact of the movement of all these plates. Now just think about that. Earlier there was Pangaea supercontinent, a very big continent where all the continents were joined together, but after that they got separated because of the movements of these plates and many other reasons as well. So you know what, that over millions years, you could say that over million years they will be changed because of the movement of all these plates all over the earth. So you could say that is about the plate tectonics, a theory, because for the origination of physical features, origination of different features on the earth, there must be some theories with evidences. So you could say that is the theory of plate tectonics. Now there is another thing, that is of Gondwana Land. Now you know what, that one of the oldest landmarks is the Gondwana Land that included India, Australia, South Africa, South America and Antarctica. So these were included in the Gondwana Land, and you could say that it is one of the oldest landmarks, and you know what, that it was present in Pangaea with the Ganga Land as well. So you could say that was our Gondwana Land. But after that what happens, that you have to remember that there are three that layers of our earth. There are crust, mantle and core. So you know what, that in the mantle there is you could say that molten magma, and that's why these plates keep moving that forward or in any other direction. Now what happens, that whenever there is molten magma, just think about that. If there is any liquid the substance above, you could say that below any solid thing, then it's obvious that solid thing will move towards you could say that will move. There will be a movement of that solid thing, and that same happens on the earth. So in the mantle there is molten magma, and on the crust there is that plates that we have discussed about, the 7 major plates and some few minor plates. So those plates keep moving, you could say that keep moving because of the molten magma. And now here what happened in our Gondwana Land, that because of the crust movement, what happened, that Indo-Australian moved towards the north. So you could say that Australia got separated in the south, and the Indo-Australian part got into the north, got separated into the north, and after that it collided with a very large plate, that was Eurasian plate. So you know what, that was a joining of of Indo-Australian border, Indo-Australian plate and the Eurasian plate. And after that, you know what, that there were many sedimentary rocks in the geosyncline border. That was, you could say that in that a very big change was occurred, and that's why there was many deposition of sedimentary rocks that created the Himalaya system of our country. So you could say that the Himalayas mountains were formed just like that, and after that there was, you know, that there was so much deposition, there was very big depression, and that depression got filled by the deposition, and you know what, that many so much alluvial soil got collected in the northern part of our country, that is known as the northern plains of our country. So you could say that in north there is northern plains and the Himalayas that were formed, and in the south there is Peninsula Plateau. Now Peninsula Plateau here means that, as all of you know, that peninsula, that area that is surrounded by water from three sides, and plateau, as all of you know, that isn't a plain. You could say that is a very range of mountains are there. So you could say that there is Peninsula Plateau in our, that is also called as the Deccan Plateau in the south. In the north there are northern plains, and you could say that there are Himalayas that were formed also. Now if you look at the Himalayas, now that you could say that cover most of the area of the, you could say, India, not just India but of Nepal and China as well. So you could say that the Himalayas that are spread in a very large area, and the northern plains, as all of you know, that there is alluvial soil that are present in the northern plains, and in the Peninsula Plateau there is a more amount of metamorphic rocks and the sedimentary rocks, and there is a variety of, you could say, that wide valleys and large rivers, you could say. So you could say that is the condition of India. We have seen that there are northern plains. Now there is, you could say, northern plains, Peninsula Plateau, Himalayas, that we will discuss later in this chapter. Now let's start with our first topic, that is major physiographic divisions. So major physiographic divisions. Now we have seen that we will discuss the major physical features of our country in this chapter. Now there are divisions, major physiographic divisions of all those physical features. So you could say that according to it, there can be 6 divisions that we will discuss. And first one of them is the Himalayan Mountains. So the Himalayan Mountains. Now this is the first physical feature of our country. Now let's look at our Himalayan Mountains. So as also know that the Himalayan Mountains that cover from west to east, that you could say that they are young fold mountains. They are young and structurally rugged mountains, and there are various peaks. There is variety of peaks, high peaks in these mountains, you could say. And you know what, that the highest mountain of the world, that is Mount Everest, is also a peak of these Himalayan mountains. So they cover from west to eastern part of India, from the river Indus to the river Brahmaputra, you could say. Now Brahmaputra has different names in different areas, you could say, but officially it is a Brahmaputra in India. So it runs from western part of India to the eastern part of India in the north, you could say, from northwest to northeast, you could say, and from the river Indus to the river Brahmaputra, you could say. And the average height, you could say that there is variations among the altitudes and the width of these Himalayan mountains. So this is just obvious, because in different regions there would be different width and different altitudes, you could say. Now you could say that its width varies from 400 kilometer in the eastern part, in western part, you could say, to 150 kilometer in the Arunachal Pradesh. So you could say that 400 kilometer in Kashmir and 150 kilometer in the Arunachal Pradesh. And there is a, you could say that there is a variation in its height as well. There is a very great difference. You know what, that there is an altitudinal difference in the heights, you could say, more in the eastern part, not in the western part. There is a very big variation in the eastern part, not in the western part. There is western part, there is difference in the western part, but not that much as compared to the eastern part. So you could say that it runs from west to east, from from the Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh, you could say, from the river Indus to the river Brahmaputra, with you could say that with a width of 400 km to 150 km. Now its height can be even more than 8,000 km and can be less, even you could say that very less as well, to you could say that as well as 1100 meter. So there are, you know what, that in any mountain, in any, we could say that mountains, big mountain peaks, there are ranges. Now there are three ranges, you could say that three parallel ranges in the longitudinal extent of these Himalayan mountains. Now those three ranges are, you could say that, are in the longitudinal extent, not in the latitudinal extent, and these three ranges are the most common, you could say. Now there are many valleys, many ranges, you could say that consist, that lie between these three ranges. There are many different types of valleys that lie between these ranges. So let's discuss those ranges one by one. Now you could say that the first range, you could say the first range of the Himalayas, of the Himalayan mountains, is the Great or Inner Himalayas or Himadri. So there are different names, but officially it is known as the Inner Himalayas or the Great Himalayas, and in the common language it is known as the Himadri. And you know what, that is, you could say that its width is about 400 km. The average width of this range is about 400 km, and we could say the height of this range is about, you could say that 6,000 meter. So you could say that average height is of 6,000 meter and the average width is about 400 km, and that is average. It is not, you could say that, same as in the same region. You could say that it is not same in different regions of that part. So you could say that is our first range, Himadri. Now you know what, then this Himadri consists mostly of the granite. You know what, that there are different types of granite, and most of the mountains, you could say that this is the loftiest peak, this is the loftiest range of the Himalayan mountains. As all of you know that the Himalayan mountains are one of the most loftiest mountains of the world, and even in this mountain the most loftiest part is this Himadri. So you could say that it consists of granite, and you could say that there are different types of most popular peaks of Himalaya mountains that are present in this range, Himadri, you could say. Now you know what, that there are many other local names of this region as well. So that is about the local names that varies from region to region, because some of the part of Himalayas also goes in Nepal and in China. So it's obvious that there will be different names in different regions of the part. So you could say that is about the first range. Now to the south of this range there is, you could say that there are Lesser Himalayas. Now Lesser Himalaya is our second range, you could say. Now these Lesser Himalayas are in the southern part of the first range, that was the Himadri. Now this Lesser Himalaya, you could say that consists, you know what, that major valleys are present in this. You could say that this second range is about the tourist place as well. There are many hill stations in this second range, and you could say that the width is about 50 km. The average width is about 50 km, and the height altitude of this range is about 3,700 meter to 4,500 meters. So you could say that is about our second range. Now if we talk about the second range, there are different types of ranges as well, like for example Pir Panjal range, or you could say that Dhauladhar range. There are many different famous ranges that lie between these two. So you could say that this range, this Lesser Himalaya range, is a kind of a very attractive place for the tourists. So you could say that there are many types of hill stations that are in this range. Now the outermost range is known as the Shivaliks. So you could say that the outermost, there are three ranges, and the first one was Himadri, second Lesser Himalayas, but the outermost is known as Shivaliks. Now this Shivaliks width is about, the mountains that are in the Shivalik range is about 10 to 50 km, and the height is about 900 meters to 1100 meters. So you could say that is about the geographical point. Now in this, you know what, that there are different valleys that lie into into this range, and they are particularly known as the Duns. And the most famous Duns that lie in this range are the Dehra Dun, Kotli Dun, Patli Dun, and there are many more, but these are one of the most, you could say that, famous, you could say. Now you could say that these are the three ranges for Himalayan mountains. First one was Himadri Mountains, Himadri range, you could say. Now next is Lesser Himalayas range, and the third and last one is about Shivalik range. Now there are different types of, you could say that, topography of all these ranges. Now we have talked about the Shivalik range. You know what, that Shivalik range has also its own type of topography. You know what, that this Shivalik range has a different type of topography, very rugged. This is what you could say that one of the most rugged topography of the Himalayan mountains. Now these three ranges are in a longitudinal extent with different regional lengths, but there are, you know what, that there are divisions of Himalayas according to the rivers as well. Now because they are longitudinal extent, they are lie in the longitudinal extent, there must be some other divisions as well, and that's why they have been divided into the rivers as well. According to it, you know what, that the part of Himalaya that lies between the Indus River and the Satluj River is known as the Kashmir Himalayas or the Himachal Himalayas, or you could say that there are different regional names, but particularly they are known as the you could say that are the Kashmir Himalayas or the Himachal Himalayas. Now the part of Himalayas that lie between the Satluj River and the Kali River is known as the Kumar Himalayas. That is a very regional name, you could say. And after that, that part of Himalayas that lie between the Kali River and the Tistan River is known as the Nepal Himalayas, and the last division is of the Assam Himalayas. So you could say that the part of Himalaya that lie between the Tistan River and the Sangpur River. Sangpur River, that is also known as the Tihang River in our country. So and that is also known as the Brahmaputra later on. So you could say that there are four major divisions of Himalayas based on the river system. And you know what, that there are different regional names of it, and there can be many other divisions of Himalayas as well that haven't been accepted officially, but for the people's confusion there have been more and more, you know what, that more and more divisions of these Himalayan mountains in the regional areas. And after that, you know what, that these Himalayan mountains are a very important border, of our country in the northeastern part, and these cover the very good part of our northeastern states, and that's why that area is called as the Purvachal. And Purvachal is, you could say that is mainly comprised of sandstones that are the sedimentary rocks, and they are parallel to the valleys. They are parallel ranges, and the valleys are also in that area. So you could say that covered with dense forest, and there are many valleys in that area, and they are parallel ranges, you could say. So you could say that is all about our Himalayan mountains. Now if we look at the Himalayan mountains, then it could be that they are divided into three ranges, that are the Great Himalayas, the Lesser Himalayas, and the Shivaliks. And after that there are the divisions based on the rivers as well, and the most important part is that it covers a very good border of our country in the northeastern part. And you know what, that it is because of the Himalayas that all those cold winds that come from Russia cannot enter in our country, cannot enter in all parts of our country, because if there wasn't any Himalayan mountains, then what would happen, that our India would have been very cold, because all those cold winds from the Russia and many more other countries would come to India, and that's why it is a very kind of protector of our country as well. So that is about the Himalayan mountains. Now next physical feature is the northern plains. So the northern plains. Now next physiographic division in our India is the northern plains. So as in starting of the chapter we had seen a little bit about the northern plains. Now let's discuss the northern plains of our country in detail. Now northern plains are, you could say that, is formed because of the major role of three river systems, that are the Brahmaputra, the Indus, and the Ganga river of our country. Well, if we look at this specifically in the very common order, then it would be the Indus River first, and then the Ganga, and then the Brahmaputra River with their tributaries as well. As all of you know that tributaries are those rivers that join in a river. Like for example, for instance, if there is a very big river that is coming and many more rivers also join it because of the geographical location, you could say, and those rivers are called as the tributaries of that river. So you could say that these all rivers along with their tributaries, because of these river systems, the northern plains were formed. And you know what, that total area, they cover the total area of 7 lakh square kilometer, and after that you could say that they are long and broad as well. If you look at the length of these northern plains, then it would be, if you look at the length of these northern plains, then it would be 2400 kilometers, and if you look at the breadth of these northern plains, then it would be from 320 kilometers, about 240 kilometers to 320 kilometers. So you could say that is about the measurement of the length and breadth, or about altitude, you could say. So northern plains are very fertile as well, because all of you know that because they have been formed because of the deposition, because there was a very great depression because of the plate tectonics, you know what, and they have been formed by the deposition of alluvial soil, and thus became very fertile. And if you look at it with a view of agriculture production, then it is a very agriculture productive part of our country. You know what, the northern plains like Punjab, you know what, that Punjab and Haryana, in these two states there was a very good major production, and in UP as well. So you could say that in the northern plains there is a very good production of agriculture, of crops, you could say, of food grains. So this is because of the northern plains are so fertile, and there is adequate water amount as well, availability of water as well, and that's why it has become a very productive part of our country. Now if you look at the northern plains, then there are 3 sections of northern plains. Now first one is about the, you could say that Punjab Plains. Now Punjab Plains, that are the western part of the northern plain, and what had happened that these are because of the Indus River and all its tributaries, that are the Jhelum, the Chenab, the Beas, the Ravi rivers, and many more rivers form this Punjab Plain, and most of this plain lies in Pakistan. As all of you know that earlier Pakistan was a part of India, but after the partition, most of the part of this plain got into the Pakistan, you could say, and you could say that it is one of the biggest biggest part of northern plain. So that is the largest part of the northern plain that lies, most of the part lies in the Pakistan and in India as well. Now next section of northern plains is the Ganga Plain. Ganga Plain that is formed by the Ganga River and its tributaries, and it passes through many states that are, if you look at originally, you could say that in an order, then it would be Uttarakhand, then UP, then Bihar, and in part of Jharkhand as well, West Bengal as well. You know what, that Ganga goes to Jharkhand and West Bengal, and after that it goes into the Bay of Bengal, after it enters to Bangladesh, and after it goes to the Bay of Bengal. So you could say that it's split into 2 parts. So that would be the Ganga Plain. You could say that the section of northern plains that is known as the Ganga Plain with many of its tributaries. And now one thing here is that the Ganga Plain passes through many states, not just one state, like was in the case of Western Plains or the Punjab Plains, you could say. Now next one is the Brahmaputra Plain that lies particularly in the region of Assam. You could say that it is a region of Punjab, and also there is a very good production of rice, because in that area it is a very, you could say that, a very swampy region with a lot of water, and that's why that area has a very good production of rice in the West Bengal as well. West Bengal, as all of you know, that the traditional culture is of rice. That's why there is a very good production of rice as well. Number 1 production of rice is in West Bengal because of this plain. So you could say that 3 sections of northern plains that are the Punjab Plains, the Ganga Plain, and the Brahmaputra Plains. Now there is a concept of distributaries as well. Now what happens that in the northern plains there are rivers that are coming, but they have been split into parts because of the deposition of slit, and that's why it's the split part is known as a distributaries. So you could say that all those rivers that come from a very big river are known as a distributary of that river, just as opposite of the tributaries, because in the case of tributaries it was joining the river, but the distributaries are those parts that are separating from that river. So that would be the case of tributaries and distributaries. Now you know what, that there have been many rumors, there have been many sayings that the northern plains are very plain and have no relief, but there can be division, there can be 4 divisions of this northern plains into 4 sections. You could say there can be 4 divisions in its relief, because that is not the true thing. It can be divided into its relief into 4 parts. Now first part is known as Bhabar. Now Bhabar, that is around the bed of 8 to 16 kilometers and contains many pebble stones that have been deposited from the river. So you could say that that is an area where there are no streams. You could say that that is the area where all the streams disappear, and that region is known as the Bhabar. And to the south of this region, of the south of this division, there is a division of Terai. You know what, that in this region what happens that all those streams and rivers re-emerge and form a kind of wet swampy area, and that is known as the Terai. So Terai, you could say that a wet and very swampy region, that is known as the Terai. And after that, most of the part is covered with the alluvial soil, with the oldest alluvial soil, and that region is called as the Bhangar. Now in the Bhangar there is a very calcareous, you could say that calcareous substance that is known, you could say that originally as Kankar. So Kankar, you could say that calcareous, there are kind of calcareous rocks that are known as the Kankar. Now these are the 3, and the last one is the Khangar. Now Khangar is a division where you could say that all those newest and latest alluvial soil are present. And you know what, that in this region, this division is a very renewable region. You could say that in every year it renews, and thus has become so fertile that is leading towards the production of our country, the agricultural production of our country. So you could say that these are the 4 divisions of the northern plains in its relief, that are you could say that the Bhabar, Bhangar, and then there is Terai, and then there is Khangar as well. Now you know what, that in the northern plains, in the region of Bhangar, in the region of Terai, earlier there were many wildlife forests. Earlier there were very dense forests and there were variety of wildlife, but after that, for agricultural production and for the people who had migrated in India after the partition of India and Pakistan, because of their household settlement and because of the agricultural production, those areas were cleared. So you could say that that is a point that has to be noticed as well, and that is the main reason why that region is wet and swampy. So you could say that that is about the northern plains. Now next physiographic division is the Peninsula Plateau. So the Peninsula Plateau, now this is our 3rd physiographic division. Now the Peninsula Plateau is also known that we had discussed a little bit in the starting of this chapter, in the introduction of this chapter. Now the Peninsula Plateau is a tableland, you could say a kind of tableland, and is composed of crystalline, the igneous, and the metamorphic rocks. So you could say that is a composition of these Peninsula Plateau that in the southern part of our country. Now they can be divided into 2 major divisions. You could say that there are 2 broad divisions of these Peninsula Plateau, that are the Central Highlands and the Deccan Plateau. Now these Peninsula Plateau, you could say that are a part of the oldest landmass, one of the oldest landmass, that is the Gondwana Land, because they have been formed because of the drifting of the Gondwana Land, the shifting and the drifting of the Gondwana Land, and that's why it has become a part of the Gondwana Land. So you could say that is about the formation, the origination of this Peninsula Plateau. Now, as they can be divided into two broad divisions, that are the Central Highlands and the Deccan Plateaus, let's discuss about them. Now, first one is Central Highlands. Now, Central Highlands are a part of plateau, or the plateau which lie in the northern part of the Narmada River and are, you could say that, bounded by the Malwa Plateau, or joined to the Malwa Plateau. So you could say that region is called as the Central Highlands, that are in northern part of the Narmada River and are, you could say that, are joined to the Malwa coast. That is about the, you could say, the Central Highlands. Now, in Central Highlands, you know what, that there is very more extensions of it as well. Now, westward extension of it is towards the sandy, rocky, you could say that, rocky and sandy deserts of the Rajasthan. Now, you know what, that is about the westward extension, and after that it is bounded from the south by the Vindhyan Range. Vindhyan Range that lies, you could say that, almost in the half part of our country. So that is bounded towards these Central Highlands from the southern part, and after that, you know what, that from the northwest part, from the northeastern part, there are Arabian hills, and that are also bounded towards Central Highlands. So you could say that westward extension towards the Rajasthan, and after that south extension towards the Vindhyan Range, and after that northeastern, you could say, extension towards the Arabian hills. So that is about the Central Highlands. And after that, you know what, that all the rivers that flow into this part, that are the Chambal, the Ken, the Betwa, these are the rivers that mainly flow into this part, into this Central Highlands. Their direction is a kind of opposite. You know what, that they flow from southwest to northeast. So you could say that opposite direction. You could say that their flow has been changed into this plateau, into the Central Highlands of our Peninsular Plateau, and that is about the Central Highlands, that almost lie in the central part of our country and have been bound with different, you know what, that but different hills and mountains, you could say. Now, this is joined to the Malwa coast in the, you could say that, in the western part of our country, and has been joined towards the north of the Narmada River, and that is about the Central Highlands. So that is about the Central Highlands. Now, you know what, that when you are talking about Central Highlands, that it is important to know that it is, you know, that it is wider in the western part but is narrower in the eastern part, and some of the east extensions are the Bundelkhand and the Baghelkhand. So you could say that the eastern point of the Central Highlands, important eastern points are the Bundelkhand and Baghelkhand, and furthermore there is Chota Nagpur Plateau that has been bounded as well. So you could say that is all about the Central Highlands. Now, next division is of Deccan Plateau. Now, Deccan Plateau, that is a kind of triangular landmass that lies in the southern part of the Narmada River. So you could say that to the south of the Narmada River it lies, and you could say that it lies in the southern part, and that Central Highlands was lying in the northern part of the Narmada River. Now, this Central Deccan Plateau, you could say that is very high and gently slopes toward the eastern part. So you could say that in the western part it is good, it is regular, and slowly slopes towards the eastern part of it. And you could say that there have been flanks. You could say it is also bounded by the Satpura range in this northern part, and after that there are many small hills and big ranges, small ranges and big hills, you could say, that are the Mahadev hills, then comes the Kaimur hills and the Maikol range. So these are bounded towards the east, you could say, southeast part of the Deccan Plateau. So that is about the foundation of different types of ranges and hills that are bounded to the Deccan Plateau. And after that, Deccan Plateau, you could say, that has been bounded by these mountains, and they have been, it could also be seen from the region of eastern part of our country, locally named as the Meghalaya, the Karbi Anlong Plateaus, and the North Chachar Plateaus, you could say. So these are just local names, you could say, that are locally known as. And after that, Deccan Plateau, it has been separated by the fault of the Chota Nagpur Plateau, and the three major hills in that lie in the Deccan Plateau are the Gharu, the Jaintia, and the Khasi, you could say. So these are some of the major hills, three of the major hills that lie in the Deccan Plateau. So that is all about the Deccan Plateau. Now there is a concept of Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. Now Western Ghats that mark the western edge of the Deccan Plateau, and the Eastern Ghats that mark the eastern edge of the Deccan Plateau. Now first let's look at the Western Ghats. Now Western Ghats that are parallel to the western coast, and these Western Ghats, you know what, that are regular, are continuous, and are second, you could say. So you could say that they are just regular, there hasn't been any separation among them, whereas compared to the Eastern Ghats you could say that are discontinuous and dysregular. And you know what, that even if we look at the height, the major height or altitude of these two Ghats, then Western Ghat is above than the Eastern Ghat, because the average elevation of the Western Ghats is about 900 to 1100 meters compared to that of Eastern Ghats, that is around 600 meters. So you could say that there is a difference of elevation as well. And if we look at the major highest point of both Ghats, then it is that Eastern Ghat, there is a very good point that is known as the Mahendragiri. Now Mahendragiri is the highest point in the Eastern Ghat, which height is about 1501 meters. And if you look at the Western Ghats, then there are two highest points that are Anamudi, that is around, you could say that is around 2900 meters, and after that comes that Doda Betta, that is of 2637 meters. So you could say that is the height of the highest peaks, highest points of both Ghats. Now you know what, that from looking at them you could say that Western Ghat is more progressively higher than compared to the Eastern Ghats, and has been even more and more progressive compared to the Eastern Ghats. Now these Western Ghats face a kind of moist winds. You know what, that they face all kind of moist winds that cause rain in that area. You know what, that in western part of our country, in the southwestern part of country, there is Kerala, and you know what, that many other states where there is a very large rain throughout the year. Throughout the whole year there has been a very large rain, and that is because of that Western Ghats. You know what, that all those moist rain winds that come into the India, because of that there is a very large amount of rain in that region, and that has to be faced by Western Ghats as well. So you could say that the main purpose of Western Ghats to face all those you could say that winds that cause the rain in that area, orographic rain in that area. So you could say that are the main purposes of Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. And after that, what happens that one of the most important feature is of black soil. Now black soil, you know what, that has been, there are black rocks in that region that have been caused because of the volcanic eruption. So those rocks are igneous rocks. As all of you know that whenever molten magma comes out and it is colded, it has freezed and has become a rock, so it will be called as the igneous rock. So igneous rocks are there in more amount. They are also known commonly as the black rocks, because they are in the black color, and after that mostly they are black soil more and more, because those black rocks have formed more and more black soil in that region. So you could say that in the black soil the most production is of cotton. In that area the cotton is produced more and more, because as all of you know that in the black soil there is very good production of cotton as well. So that is, you could say, that most important feature of the Deccan Plateau is of the black soil. There is more and more black soil, you could say, because of the volcanic eruption. So that we have discussed about the Peninsula Plateau. We have seen about the Central Highlands and the Deccan Plateaus, and even in Deccan Plateaus there are Eastern Ghats and the Western Ghats, you could say. Now next division is about the Indian Desert. So the Indian Desert. Now we have seen about different physiographic division. Now next is about the Indian deserts. You know what, that the largest desert of India is a Thar desert, that is in Rajasthan. So let us look at the deserts of India. Now these deserts, you know what a desert mean? These deserts are in the western margin of the Arabian hills, and they receive very low rainfall, around 150 mm per year, and that's why these regions are very arid, you could say, and there are very less chances of any production of agricultural production in these areas. So you could say that in these areas there is very less growth of agricultural production. There isn't any kind of, you could say that, growing of any crop in these arid regions, because they are very arid as they receive very low rainfall, and that's why in these regions you can only find sand and sand dunes. And if you look at the plants, then the major plants are the cactus. So in these regions cactus are found mainly, you could say, and all those reptiles like lizards, snakes, and many other lizards and many other reptiles are also in these regions. So that is about the Indian desert that receive a very low rainfall, and only in the rainy season there are any kind of streams that appear, but also they got disappear in any other season, in the summer season or in the winter season, because in the rainy season there is a little of rainfall, and that's why the streams appear. But after that, as they have no rain in that area, and that's why those streams got separated, got disappeared in the sea. And there is only one river, you could say that there is only one very large river that is in that area, that is a Luni river. So you could say that Luni river, that is only one river, large river in the Indian desert area of India. So you could say that the deserts of India, only the Luni river is there. So you could say that is about the Indian deserts. And now there is a concept of bad chance. Now bad chance, you could say that crescent shaped sand dunes, that are dunes with a crescent shape. So that mountains are found mainly in these deserts that are the westward extension of the Arabian hills. So you could say that if you go there, then definitely you will find bad chance, and they are kind of attractive because many tourist places, many tourists also go there. So that is about the Indian deserts that receive very low rainfall, are very arid with no agricultural production, and have bergens and cactus and many snakes as well. So that is about the Indian desert. Now next topic is the coastal plains. So the coastal plains, as from the name you can suggest what it is. So the coastal plains, as we had looked in the case of Peninsula Plateau, and after that Peninsula Plateau is flanked by the stretch of the coastal plains in the western Ghats as well as the eastern Ghats. In the western part as well as the eastern part, you could say the southwestern and the southeastern part of our country, of the Peninsula Plateau. Now in the western part, you know what, that there are western coasts, you know what, that there are western coasts, western coast or boundaries, you could say, that have been sandwiched between the western Ghats and the Arabian Sea. And in the eastern part there are eastern coasts that have been in the sandwiched between the eastern Ghats and the Bay of Bengal. So they have been, you could say, that touched by the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal in the both directions, in the west as well as in the east. And after that, you know what, that if you look at the western coast, then they can be divided into three sections. First is about that separates, that got stretched over the Mumbai to Goa, and that region is known as the Konkan coast. Konkan coast, as all of you know, that Konkan is also a language, a major language in the Karnataka region. And after that comes that the central coast, that is the central coast and lies in the middle, you could say, and that is also known as the Kannada coast because it lies in the central part of the western region and is known as the Kannada coast, and the southernmost coast is known as the Malabar coast. So these are the three sections of the western coast. And after that there are eastern coast, there are eastern coasts as well that have been sectioned as well. There are divisions of those eastern Ghats as well. So the northern part is known as the northern Sarkar coast, and the southern part it is known as the Coromandel coasts. And the last rivers like Kaveri, Godavari, Krishna makes the delta on these coasts. So you could say that these last rivers you could say that form a kind of delta on these coasts. And you could say that Lake Chilika is also one of the most important feature in this coast. Lake Chilika, as all of you know, that is the largest saltwater lake in our country. The largest saltwater lake of our country, of India, is the Lake Chilika. That is also one of the most important feature of the eastern coast. So that is about the western coast and the eastern coast, that are the coastal plains. And you know what, that there are islands as well. If we conclude, you could say that a total coastline boundary of our country is about 7,516.6 kilometers, including all islands and our mainland as well. So as we had discussed in the previous chapter, so that is about the coastal plains. Now next and last subtopic of this chapter is the islands. So the islands, that is, you could say that one of the major physiographic division of our country. Now we have seen about the physiographic division of the mainland of our country, but India also has two group of islands, that are the Lakshmi Islands on the Arabian Sea and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in the Bay of Bengal. Now first is Lakshmi Islands in the Arabian Sea. Now Lakshmi's Islands that cover around the area of 32 square kilometers. And you know what, that they are that much scattered, you could say, and they are very closely linked to the Malabar coast of the Kerala. And you know what, that on Lakshmi Islands, if we talk about the Lakshmi Islands, about the history of it, then earlier it was known there are three islands that were known as the Laccadive Islands, Minicoy and Aminitive Islands. But after the Reorganization States Act of 1973, they were joined together and was named as the Lakshmi Islands. So that is the concept of Lakshmi Islands that cover the 32 square kilometer area. And after that, if we look about the Lakshmi Islands, then we will look that it is closely linked to the Malabar coast and has a different types of flora and fauna. There are varieties of flora and fauna, and the Piti Island of Lakshmi Islands that isn't habitated by the people, that is uninhabited. And you know what, that in this region there is a very big bird sanctuary. So you could say that there are many birds that are found and different types of wildlife. Different types of birds are found in the Lakshmi Islands. Now that lies in the part of our Arabian Sea. Now there is Bay of Bengal as well, where lies the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. So these two are islands. They are broadly categorized. In the north there are Andaman Nicobar Islands. In the north there are Andaman Islands, and in the south there are Nicobar Islands. And you know what? As compared to the Lakshmi Islands, they are more bigger in size and are more scattered, you could say. And that's why they have been categorized mostly in the two parts, that are Andaman Islands and Nicobar Islands. As we have seen that about the Lakshadweep, the main headquarters of the Lakshadweep is in Kavaratti region of Lakshadweep Islands, and that's why it is also the capital of Lakshadweep Islands. And same in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, there is Port Blair, that is the capital of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and is the main popular city, metropolitan, you could say, main headquarters are present in that city of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So that you could say that, and these Andaman and Nicobar Islands are the great importance of the strategic of our country, because they are deemed to be the submerged, you could say that submarine mountains. They are more and more submarine mountains, and they have a great importance of our strategic territory as well. So you could say that they have many boundaries as well, that is about the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And just as in the Lakshadweep Islands, these islands also have a variety of flora and fauna. And you know what, that in this region there are more and more strategic opinions of our country. All those that submarines and all those that are used for the oceanic, that the wars, you could say that wars in the river, wars in the water bodies, all those parts in this region, and major ports are also in that region. So you could say that is about the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now we have seen about the islands. We have seen that there are two groups of islands, that are Lakshadweep Islands and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now the Lakshadweep Islands, there are more and more coral creatures, and in Andaman and Nicobar Islands there are more and more people, you could say, more, because it is more bigger compared to the Lakshadweep Islands. And that we have seen about the islands. Now we have seen all this in this chapter. Now you know what, that all major physiographic division of our country has its own unique feature, has its own unique, the beneficial feature for our country. Like for example, all those mountains, the Himalayan Mountains, and all those mountains are a great source of water and the forest region of our country. And if we look at the northern plains of our country, then you could say that they are a kind of granaries of our country, and the Peninsula Plateau are a kind of storehouse of all those major minerals that are crucial for the industrialization of our country. And all those, that coasts and the islands are supporting to the port activities and the fishing spots in our country. So you could say that all divisions, all physical divisions, you could say that physical features of our country has its own feature, unique feature, you could say. Now there is a reason that is a Majuli. Now Majuli is in the Brahmaputra river and is the largest riverine island. You could say that unpopulated largest riverine island of the world. So that is the riverine island and has inhabited. You could say that it's inhabited by the people and is the largest in the world. And on the spot of the barren island, there is only one, you could say that, active volcano of India. So on the barren island of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, there is a volcano that is the only volcanic, you could say, active volcano of our country. So that is about the physical features of our country. We have seen about different types of physical features. We have seen about the Himalayan Mountains, where there are three most biggest ranges about the longitudinal extent. We have seen about the Peninsula Plateau. After that, we have seen in the Peninsula Plateau about the Deccan Plateau and the Central Highlands. And after that, we have seen about the islands, about the coasts, and about the islands, about the Indian desert as well. So that's all we have seen in this chapter. Now there is one of the most biggest feature, that is of a basin, how a basin is created. We will also see in the next chapter about it, about the drainage system for our country. So that is all we have discussed in this chapter. This chapter has its own importance because the main directions of all rivers, main things of all rivers, of all things, the main directions of all ponds are very important to learn. So you must know how to locate them on map as well. So this is all we have discussed in this chapter. I've discussed our topics and subtopics, and the remaining chapters of this book will be covered in the further upcoming videos. So thank you very much.